where it's got those in between ghost snares, but we can listen to this all together. Hi guys, SKETI here, welcome back to a new tutorial. This time we're going to look at how to use Corpus on a snare drum to make it sound a little bit different, maybe stranger. You can use this for making like effects type of snares, or using it to basically make your snares sound a little bit brighter or with some more interesting sounds if they're sounding a little bit dull and flat. So let's get to it. Right, so I've got this snare drum here, which I'm just going to turn off the effects that I've been using, like so. So this is the snare drum. Just a very basic live snare drum, nothing to it really. But what I have done to start with is I've just pitched it up 60 Hz and added a little bit of glue compressor to start with, just to give it a little bit more of a snap and obviously pitch it up as well. Cool. I'm just going to loop around this one snare here. A little bit longer. There we go. Right, so I've got this EQ8 here, and this is going to be apparent when I start using the Corpus, but this is to find out the fundamental frequency of the snare drum. So if we play this back, and what I'm looking at here is for the highest peak, which is sort of the fundamental tone of that snare drum. So when I hover around this area, so it's telling me that it's E3. Now this is necessary to know because when we start using the Corpus, because it resonates, we want to know the fundamental frequency, and we can use that frequency or ratios of frequencies within sort of a scale, if you can imagine it that way. So the Corpus tool, basically what it is, it's a resonator, and it has several different ways. It takes a signal, and it's like if you sort of mic'd up a material and sent this signal through that material. It basically is how this signal vibrates through that material and the sound that comes out of the other end. So we've got a beam, a marimba, string, membrane, plate, pipe and tube. Now this is really useful for not just snare drum sounds, but for any drum sound, but also for bass sounds as well, where you can create some really interesting textures. So what we can do is if we just listen to this now, so that's what it's like if it ran through a beam, a marimba, string, membrane, plate, a pipe and a tube. Now as you can hear, adds some interesting harmonics above the fundamental tone of the snare, and we can use this in an interesting way just to sort of colour the snare up, add some more interest to that sound, because at the moment the snare sounds okay, but I feel like it needs more life to it. Yeah. So I'm going to try using the plate, for example. And what we can do is, obviously we found out the fundamental frequency of the snare was E3. You see where it says tune here is I can move this up, and then we can have that about E3, like so, and we can fine tune this even more. So there we go. So yeah, it's E3 plus 5 cents. Now that sounds a little bit too resonant with the initial fundamental, so I'm going to put this up an octave. So let's try that. Again, holding shift down, there we go. So now that's starting to add some top end that I do like the sound of. But at the moment the decay of it's a little bit too long, so I can bring this down. So basically I'm looking for the decay of this to last the same length as a snare drum does. Obviously we can change the material percentage as well. So this basically makes it brighter or duller. And obviously the brighter I go, if I extend the decay out, you can hear it resonates longer as well. So if we just pull it back, sorry about that. Still suffering with the flu at the moment, so I've got a bit of a cough. Cool. Now this listening L and I is basically how loud the resonator, sort of the position of the resonator in the left and the right. So I tend to keep these the same because it keeps it balanced. Now you can change these. All of these settings that I'm showing you, obviously it's not just you'd use these settings and it's going to make your snare drum sound great. You need to use these differently for different snare drums. Now we have a spread here as well, and basically the way to imagine this is if we've got this single resonator and then you split it into the stereo field, so you've got the same resonator in the left and the right. And it's like the simple stereo spread that's used in Operator and other synths and plugins within Ableton Live. So basically it pitches the right side up and the left side down. So if we went like say 6.3%, it's going to pitch the right hand side up 6.3% and the left hand side down 6.3%. So this can give us a little bit more spread and some interesting harmonics. And obviously depending how far you go with it, depends how much it really starts to pitch those resonators left and right. Cool, we also have inharmonics as well, which basically adjusts the pitches of the resonator's harmonics. So again, you can just really get into some fine tuning of this resonator to make it sound as good with the snare drum or sound that you're working with as possible. Obviously the brightness tool brightens it up or makes it duller. Cool, and then this last section here, which is really useful to have, is obviously we can turn the bleed on, which basically bleeds the original snare through back more. We can turn the filter on, and this is really useful because basically we can shape this so either it's resonating only but pushing through the resonation in the low end or the top end. And resonation's not really a word, it's resonance, there we go. Now because I'm trying to add some extra harmonics on the top end, obviously I'm going to look at the top end here. And then we can change the width so we can make this again completely mono or 100% stereo. And then the dry wet, obviously if we turn this up to 100%, we're just going to hear the resonator. Cool, so in a nutshell, that's what the Corpus can do to snare drums, and it can add some really interesting sounds. So here's one that I made earlier, as they used to say on Blue Peter. So it's quite similar to the one that I've made here, as you can see, similar settings. With just slightly more refined sounds with it. Cool. And then also what I've done on the end here is just some more shaping, and if you've looked at any of my other tutorials on snares, this is basically just an OTT with some compression settings, an EQ8 just to round off the snare drum, and a glue compressor on the end. But I am just going to add another EQ8 just for some mid-side, because with this obviously these resonators, and as I've started to change the spread a little bit as well, this has actually added in some stereo width, which obviously if I want my snare to hit through with mono summing so it doesn't cancel itself out with phase issues, I'm just going to bring that up to there, so basically we've got no side in the low frequencies. And that's just basically tightened that up in the stereo field. And what is always good to do, just to check that the snare drum works and fits with the beat, is check it against this. So this is a backing beat that I've created without a snare drum in it, where it's got those in between ghost snares, but we can listen to this all together. Cool. So what I would do with that snare really is, it's a good top end snare to use now. I would then find another snare that's got a really punchy bottom end and then layer those two snares together. But just using that Corpus tool, it's basically taken an okay live sounding snare drum and made it more interesting with some resonations, as if it's played through a plate. So if you imagine this would be a metal plate. But yeah, the Corpus tool is really useful for drums like snare drums. Anyway guys, I hope you found this tutorial useful and something that you can use in your own music. If you have, drop a comment, any questions that you've got or any recommendations for future tutorials. If you want to leave a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you see my videos more in the future. I also stream on Twitch very regularly during the week, so you can check me out over on there, where we play some bass, I make some more music, listen to people's tunes, we get together, just have a lot of fun. There's a great community over there, really friendly people. Anyway guys, I shall see you next time. Bye.
Everybody jump up, come on!